Hey, what's up, everybody? Lawler here, your inside source for all things Rocket League. Going to be something a little bit different. Obviously, there's a lot of roster changes for the winter split, but rather than just telling you guys from start to finish what they all are, I figured why not make a tier list? But before we get into that, as always, if you guys enjoy the content, as always, down in the comments below, questions, comments, concerns, hit me up, as well as hit up all the social medias, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. And if you enjoy the content, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's get into the video. So as you can all see, there is a bunch of teams from North America. We've had some roster changes and stuff over the past couple of weeks. And what we are going to be doing is, rather than just talking about the rosters, I'm also going to place in categories from S tier to D tier who I think and how I think they're going to stack up for the winter split. Now, things to keep in mind with the winter split, it is a different format. We've never seen such an elongated process for the double elimination. We usually only got to see double elimination twice a year, and that was at the World Championship in the final bracket. So now that that has been put as a regular system as part of league play, per se, I guess the best way to put it, but for these regional events, every regional, we're going to be seeing double elimination. Curious to see if we're going to see a bunch of underdogs and either kind of like that lower bracket run that we've seen in the past, or if it's going to be more of a pretty similar high seed wins, and it goes without saying. So Psyonix has made adjustments to the splits in the past based on like one game advantage stuff. Curious to see if they do that in the grand finals for the double elimination for the upper team, if they notice the lower team keeps winning every single time. So hopefully they make those adjustments if it does happen. Otherwise, let's get straight into it, and we're going to kind of rifle through these, especially the teams that aren't making any changes. First one's first, Space Station Gaming, obviously an S tier. This team can show to be the #1 team in the region. They have won the most recent major. They have won a fall regional as well, and have never not been in the top 4. Very talented team. They had a couple of times throughout the season where they dipped a little bit lower, but without a doubt, if you look at the season as a whole, this is a team that you should consider as one of the best. Reddles, in a recent interview, thinks that they are going to be the best team in the world. Obviously, usually when he talks a lot of ish, he backs it up. This is a team that is very dangerous, and the reason why I classify them as S tier is they have all the pieces. Every player on the team, offense or defense, can do it all. So Space Station Gaming, S tier for sure. We're going to put up there alongside them as well, Energy. I think Energy is also an S tier team, and unfortunately the logo that I uploaded is all black, so it's a little bit harder to see. But Energy was squishy. This originally I think would have been an A team, but what's put them into the S tier team as a team that also just barely behind Space Station Gaming, taking second place in that regional and winning the second place in the major, and then winning the second regional. They have also been a team that pretty similarly has either won it all or been in talks of winning it all. There was some, I guess, slight hesitation with this team, with Squishy coming in, not really sure what his form or what his role was going to be. Now that he is a little bit more defensive heavy, he is taking a little bit more solo plays to break it out downfield. Also goes for a lot of bumps and demos, and has really opened up some opportunities. And then you're tying in with that both Justin and Garrett, who can do whatever they want as well. Not saying Squishy can't. Squishy's also phenomenal. So another S tier team. A lot of things I really like about this roster. This is where things are going to get a little bit interesting. This is a little bit more of an opinionated thing about where I think teams stack up. I'm going to put these both in A tier together with both Energy and G2. And the reason as to why this is even though I think these teams are both plenty capable of winning it all, and they have, without a doubt, been in the top 4 every single time, to me, Energy and Space Station are both teams that can do it all on both offense and defense. I've seen glimpses of both G2 and Envy doing this, but it's not as consistent as I would like. I talk about a lot how I really enjoy G2 and Envy as teams when they play against each other, because it's a lot of offense versus a lot of defense. I also find it very interesting that Energy versus Space Station. Space Station 9 out of 10 times wins that matchup in the sense of the play styles that come with it. But for Envy, I always think as this super defensive, but they have potential to be good on offense. And for G2, I think they're really offensive and really solid on offense, one of the best in the world, but their defense tends to lack sometimes. So even though I want to put them at that high echelon, I do think they're just a tiny step below, and that's not to discredit them. I think they're both fully capable of winning the whole thing. They have shown that they can win the whole thing, but the consistency side between Energy and SSG are just going to put them a little bit ahead. If I had to, essentially Envy and G2 are A+. They're not really A. They're just like right there if I could like put them on the line and have them like tipping into S, I would. This is where things get a little bit more interesting based upon what you want to say. C is average in the United States. It's kind of like your bare bones. So I'm going to try to take that into consideration about how I think these teams stack up. C for me is going to be like the baseline. This is where teams are where I'm like, you're good. You play upset. You take some wins off some notable teams, but you still got to do it a lot in order for me to be happy with you. D is like, you have done things, but more often than not, I'm never going to give you the benefit of the doubt. And I'm not going to put anybody like bottom tier F like you suck, because I think honestly, all the teams that are in this list have definitely shown potential. It's just there's some that definitely have a league ahead of the others. So this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. I think good B tier teams as of right now, you can do KC Pioneers, Keeps, I think without a doubt are in there. Honestly, I think that's it right now. Rogue, I guess, but Rogue is back and forth and they've got some roster changes. So we'll figure that out. So the nice thing about all these teams is none of them are making a roster change. Every single team here that you have seen is the exact same. Rosters across the board has been identical. Nothing is changing from the last split. In the description, if you'd like to see these rosters, you can find a link and it will display all the rosters they updated from the fall split to the winter split, so you can stay up to date. Probably a good idea to have that still open while you're watching this if you'd like to make it easy, but that will be in the description. But all 6 of these teams are staying the exact same. The reason I put KC Pioneers and Peeps down below a little bit is they are still very good and they have shown potential, but they have yet to break into that top 4. Almost every single tournament, if not every tournament, has without a doubt been one of these 4 teams either A, winning at the top from S and A, or they are without a doubt in contention for those spots. Every once in a while, you do see Peeps and KCP playing that kind of anomaly where they are the ones to break in. And in this case, have shown KCP primarily been kind of pushing into that. But with regards to that, I do think they are still a step below, just because they haven't been able to win the whole thing like the other 4 have. So both really good teams, both super good. These are teams that I think throughout the entire season have kind of fought for the 4-5 spot and have been in that conversation, and definitely are still a little bit of a head up against the teams that are just one step below them. This is where it gets more difficult because all the rest of these teams have made some sort of a change. And that makes it tough because we don't have any results to base it upon. I will say some of these we have seen in the WSOE qualifiers recently, and some have played in the open qualifiers as well to get into the grid. But to me, that's not enough to showcase how they're going to stack up against the RLCS level talent when it comes to not just the top 32, the top 16. You're talking your top 8 teams, the ones that are going to be the tough matchups that really tell us what you're made of. Because some teams like V1 in the past, even though they are pretty low on the standings, have shown that they compete against the best. They play up to their competition, but also play down to their competition, which makes it pretty tough. I think easy ones that you could put in C right now are kind of your guys that have shown good promise throughout the season. So I think I'm going to just kind of do these off the top of my head. I think you can be there. I think you can be there now. And I'll debate about the other ones as we get there. So Alpine staying the exact same. This is a team that has as well finished in the top 10 of the last season. They are 7th right now because Kansas City Pioneers and Peeps are tied for 5th. No changes between Percy, Magic Bear, and Jordan. I think a very talented team. I think Mystic has done a fantastic job as a coach. I've been saying that, singing his praises all season long. But they just haven't found a way to consistently make it into top 8, let alone top 4. They've had some good performances in the later regionals, but they're good performances. They've been 0-2 quite a few times, or they've dropped out early. Just a lot left to be desired, and I don't know why that is, because they're a very talented team individually and mechanically, and they also apply a lot of pressure, but they still suffer from some kind of big mistakes. If these guys are playing on and they're not making those mistakes because they are such a aggressive team, very similar to G2 in their offense where they just overwhelm you and there's nothing you can do. But teams have gotten pretty good at defense in the past season and the last split, so kind of difficult on that one. United, I think, is a team that could possibly push into B depending on if the results show for it. They recently obviously added Tristan towards the tail end of their season. It's now Tristan, Wondamike, and Ajax. Tristan, obviously the latest addition. But my eyes have been on Wondamike in the WSOE Open Quals. The guy was popping off, hitting some ridiculous angles and just kind of feeling it. He even popped into chat a couple days ago and was talking about it. He's like, yeah, today was my day. They need to find a way to recreate that. Whatever Wheaties or whatever he was eating that morning, he's got to find a way to make that into a routine. Tristan has added a lot of interesting mechanical ability and has been getting more and more reps. And Ajax, credit to him, has definitely been on the grind, putting in more hours than ever. #1 in some ranked leaderboards. Guy's putting in a lot of effort, and it's showing. And it's basically turning this team into, rather than just supporting and trying to exemplify and enable a player, all 3 players have that capability, which is what you need nowadays in RLCS at the high level. Every player needs to be a force to be reckoned with. They just got to find out how they're going to be cohesively. The more time and the more reps they get in, United's going to be very dangerous. I think they are kind of that base level. If you want to be a good team, United's going to be the one that you have to get through, along with the rest of these teams that are in the list. But they have the chance to push up as well as kind of play down as well. They have some upset losses too. Rogue is a unique one. I don't know how this team is going to play. If you guys don't know, Cronovia is no longer on the roster. They're bringing in Taroko from Canada, and it is going to be Taroko, Turinturo, and First Killer. I think they're missing some veteran experience and some age, I guess, some maturity that comes with it. Not saying that the others are immature by any means. It's just when you have a presence like Cronovia that can kind of keep things in focus. But obviously there's been a lot of dirty laundry that's been aired about that, or just frustrations in the internal stuff. So maybe a fresh start is what they need. They have lacked, and they have shown moments of brilliance, very similar to a team like Guild, I would say, over in Europe, where the old Guild would be a team that was like, we can beat the best of the best and go toe-to-toe against Vitality, but then they poop the bed and lose to like a 16th seed, which is like, what are you guys doing? Why is this a thing? So Rogue feels that way too. They get their team's hopes up really high, and then they fall short. And they have broken into top 4 a couple times, but I don't know how Taroko is going to be impactful coming from Plot Twist. Very talented roster for sure. But how is he going to fit into this role? I don't know. I do not know what the situation is. I still have a lot of concerns about Turinturo, but it'll be interesting to see where they develop. I think there's a lot of talent on this team, and I'm excited to see where it goes, but I can't quite put them high. And I don't think they lack talent to be enough to be in that lower spot. So I think Rogue's going to be an interesting to watch out for. Pittsburgh Knights also making a roster change. They're bringing in Sosa instead of Kinsey on this team. So it'll be Ridoko, ZPS, and Sosa with Kinsey on the way out. This team can be hit and miss. I was pretty happy about them. They had some really good performances in the grid, but never really quite in the regionals. Right now, overall, they are sitting in 11th place. And I'm curious to see how they end up developing, because Sosa was kind of this big impact player that came into Plot Twist. Now that Plot Twist is all dispersed, that talent is being spread apart, which I think is probably better, honestly, for the NA seed. It'll be interesting to see how PK improves, because it felt like something was lacking from the team and we didn't get enough. They did have a decent performance towards the top 16 in the major, but like, there's something to be desired. So hopefully Kinsey being out and Sosa being in, Sosa can have that same level of height that he brought to Plot Twist. Next up is Sonics, and this team has gone through some major changes. For those that don't know, originally Shock got benched and they brought in Roldiz, their coach. Shock is now back on the starting roster. J-Russ was their newest addition, which a lot of people are like, J-Russ is absolutely cracked. He's super good. And they didn't know what they were going to do without that. Well, another player who was a sub that had a really big performance for XSET in T. Corral is now joining them as their official. So Roldiz is going back to coach. T. Corral is coming in as a full-time start with J-Russ. Shock is holding it down. This is another team where I do not know how this team is going to perform. Theoretically, there's a lot of talent on this team, and they should be able to make something happen. But how personalities are going to mesh, how things are going to work out, how scrims are going, I don't know. But this team has too much talent out to be. I mean, you're talking Shock used to be an MVP season 9. Obviously, that's a while ago in a different format and everything else that's coming with it. But J-Russ, I think, has really found his form and has been a high impact player for this team. And T. Corral, I think, will be able to pick up where he left off. So I think Sonics could possibly and potentially alongside United bump into that B. But I think all these teams could as well. I don't think there's any bad team on this list. There's definitely some that consistently are more towards the top. But I do think this C tier more than ever could definitely be like a C plus, B minus kind of area. So I think Sonics is going to be an interesting to look at as well. I'm curious to see on what T. Corral's impact is going to be now that they're back with their full starting roster. A lot of eyes on this team because they obviously want to get back to that top 4 position they were when they first came in with Dapper and Sathu. And unfortunately for Sathu, now retiring. So unfortunate situation there. Next up, gosh, these are tough. Let's talk about Ghost. Ghost is a team that I've only seen play once with their new roster, and I was impressed. Alongside them, and a team I actually don't have on this list that gets a shout out, is Nefarious. And I'm going to put them here just because of the storyline that they had in the fall split. For those that don't know Ghost, Ghost used to be Omelette, and if you don't know, Omelette had a really good performance during Beyond the Summit. They made it all the way to the grand finals until they lost to NRG, and was this super hot, off the block team that was like, dang, these guys are going to be great. And for some reason, they just did not do well or adjust well to the new season and the fall split. They just did not look all that great. Most recently, they are also a beneficiary of the split up of the plot twist team, and now Mektos is joining them as their new third. Unfortunately, they are getting rid of Luke, who was kind of this guy that came in and had a really big personality in his gameplay, but just never really recreated it from what it felt like in the fall split. And it feels like the team feels the same way with him being the one being let go. So it is Freshness, Lion Blaze, and Mektos. Right now I have them at a D, and I know that is underwhelming. You should put them at essentially a C-. But Ghost Gaming is a team that I think is going to be making strides. They are the first overall seed from the open qualifiers coming in to the WSOE event that's going on this weekend that I'm casting. And they looked good. They looked really good. There was some pretty tough matches in there and a lot of pop-off potential between E United and everybody else that played. But Ghost Gaming looked pretty dominant, and I don't know if they're going to be able to stack up against the teams above them. These are going to be not easy calls. If Ghost goes against any of these teams coming up soon, I can't give a nod to either team. I think it is extremely neutral, which is credit to Ghost. I just need to see it happen more than once. And that's the only reason I have them in D right now, is just because it's one time that you've done it. I need to see it more than once before I give you the credit. So I think Ghost could definitely be in that C tier territory, but until I see it again, I can't put them in there with a good feeling. I hate to do it to them, but up next, probably going to be 72PC. We're going to put them at D as well. If you guys don't know, they ended up getting rid of Wonder. Wonder is now back to Crimson Wings with Prime Thunder. But 72PC is going to be adding, in addition, Seabass instead. So it is Seabass, Jacob, and Ty. I don't know, man. Like, I love the characters on the team. Jacob is probably one of my favorite pros, if I'm being completely candid with y'all. I just haven't seen this team do anything really special in a very long time, which is unfortunate because they're all great people. Right now, the standings are 17th, so they are competitive, but they're not qualifying for the grid. They're also just out of anything major, and that kind of scares me, considering there's other teams in the same category that I'm going to have to put them alongside. But I just think there's a lot to be desired, and I don't know if it's just because of the talent on the team being a little bit lesser, and that's not saying that any of the players on this team are bad. It's just the game has gone and progressed so much in the mechanical side. I think some of these players have just kind of fallen off a little bit, and it's nothing due to me being disrespectful. It's just people are getting really freaking good, and it shows even more so the credit to players that have been around, like Rizzo since the beginning, and Garrett, that it is very tough to stay at the top, and the ones that do are obviously revered as legends and kind of that Hall of Fame category. So 72PC, I think there's just a lot to be desired. I don't know if Seabass is going to be enough to really tie it together, but this team gives you a lot to be desired. So Jacob, Seabass, and Ty, hopefully you can make something happen, but as of right now, I just haven't seen it in a while, so right now you're at D tier. Alongside them, and I hate to do this, is going to be V1, because obviously you guys know I cast their grid. V1 to me is a team that has been able to play up to their competition significantly. I think you could even put V1 possibly in C tier, and I think I'm going to bump them up to C tier, and hopefully this doesn't come off as a bias. This is my justification for it. V1 is a team that can either beat the best, and have done so. They've had upsets against NRG and G2 and Envy and other teams at that upper echelon, but they also struggle against teams that they should win. The reason why the teams in the SNA tier are there is because they consistently win and make it to the top. V1 in their last 2 weeks of the grid have done that. They have gotten top 8 and top 4 to keep their spot in the grid. We're not talking about the grid. We're talking about regionals. We're talking about going to the majors. Didn't make the majors. Right now they're tied for 17th in the standings with a team like 72PC. The difference, though, with V1 is they have taken games off of that top-tier team. They can play up to the competition, but also play down to the competition, which to me is kind of that middle of the pack. They're average right now, which is unfortunate because I have seen the highs and they look very good. With that said, this is now a new team. It is no longer Gimmick, Torment, and AXB. AXB is now officially gone. An announcement just happened. This is now going to be in the addition of Calm. If you guys don't know Calm, very talented player, known for, ironically, his communication, and should revitalize this team, I hope, and provide a different level of energy. Gimmick and Torment play a very unique style of offense, and they have to find someone that's going to mesh and play with that, because it doesn't look like they're going to be changing anytime soon. Torment has spent a lot of effort into playing offense, and it looks great. If I'm being candid, again, it looks absolutely dominant. Torment being on defense is a waste, even though he's very talented at it. So I'm curious to see if they continue a 3-man rotation, how Calm is going to adjust. This one is kind of with an asterisk of I don't know what the results are going to be, but I do know the capability of the team with the veteran experience. And this is going to be Calm's first shot at a top-tier roster, a top-tier organization. And maybe that's enough to let him settle in and really find a new home. Because boy, oh boy, do I desperately want V1 to be successful. So I do think they're middle of the pack, and a lot of the reason why is because of the potential that they've shown in the past. You could almost drop them into D, and I hope this isn't a bias showing. I hope my justifications make sense. But I am very interested to watch, and hopefully I get to cast V1 again for the winter grid. But I want to see this team develop again. I think there's a lot of exciting things, and Calm is a player that has shown at DreamHacks that he can be a stud. So gonna be a fun team to watch. Next up is gonna be, let's talk about XSET. I think XSET's a fun one, and they don't really get looked at too much. So far for XSET, not so good, which is unfortunate. And I think this one is gonna be a long-term potential, and I have to put them at D because even though I know long-term there's a lot of potential, I'm talking right now, and that stinks because I'm doing this as of right now. I do think XSET's going to be better in the future. For those that don't know, they also made a roster change. Previously, they had Alraz. Alraz has gone over to Charlotte Phoenix. It is now JPOW, AlphaCap, and Hoxer. Hoxer coming over from United. Hoxer should provide a level of stability for this team to allow AlphaCap and JPOW to flourish. It is going to take some time for that chemistry and that natural, I guess, play style come into play. But until we get to see it, I can't be too confident on this team. The only time we've seen them is in the WSOE Open qualifiers, and they dropped out very early. I think you're talking round 3 in the uppers, they fell down, so didn't even make it to top 16. And then in the lowers, they lost after 1 or 2 games as well. So a lot to be desired of XSET. So far, it has not looked good, but after talking with AlphaCap and others, there is a lot of hope for what this team may develop into in the future. So a team that, again, we're going to have to keep our eyes on. But as of right now, with the results and the way that things have gone, I can't really bump them ahead. They do have some results, obviously, last season, the fall split. Right now, they're tied for 9th, putting them technically 9th, 10th. So they are in the top 10 for the results, but with that said, you got to find a way to do it. And I guess the redeeming factor is they have shown improvement throughout the weeks. They had a bad week, good week, bad week, better week in the regionals and in the majors. So hopefully that is a sign that things are starting to get better and they can continue to improve. I know this is a very low grade. I should probably put them in C, but with the new roster change, it's hard to. So hopefully this ends up being a C, maybe even a B tier team in the future. Frontline is the next team that I'm going to be talking about. If you guys don't know Frontline, this is Andy Beast, I can never say his name, Beasta Bonium and Delta. Very similar to, like Magnifico in Europe, where they were this upset team that came in and could only play in the open qualifiers for regionals. And despite that, have had really good performances in every single regional. Right now, they're sitting in 9th place overall, right next to XSET, and probably why I'm talking about them. The thing about this team, though, and the reason why I put them in C tier is because they have shown to be upsets, consistent results, even though they're not pushing into the top, in the top 8. They have shown consistently where they belong in kind of that like 11 to 14 area, without a doubt, and they've never dipped down. They've always given us a base level or higher, never below, which is really good. And they're not making a roster change. Everything for this team is staying the exact same. I think they're good base level. I think a lot of teams struggle with them, especially the lower tier teams. I think have a really hard time getting through them. But again, reiteration, all of these teams, whether here or here or here, have shown that they can trade wins at any given moment, which is really exciting. We've got new formats coming in and everything else. How teams are going to adjust to it will be interesting. But keep in mind, Loco used to be Frontline. Frontline was a team that a lot of people have seen push into the top 10 of my power rankings every so often. So keep them in mind, they're a good team, and that's why I have them where I do in C tier. Good team to beat, but not pushing against the very high level. So the way I kind of look at it is if I take these teams and I say, hey, head-to-head matchup, can you win it? I'm going to give the advantage to all these teams over Loco, and the same thing applies to these. Next up is going to be Charlotte Phoenix. As I mentioned, Alraz has now officially joined the team. Unfortunately for Dapper, he has been given the boot. So Alraz has made a little bit of an impact. I think the most exciting thing is in the WSOE quals. They did end up reverse sweeping a team and showed that they can hold on. This is a team that's always struggled in kind of the lows where when they have a uphill battle, they never really close it out. High pressure situations, they've had a big struggle. Alraz has also been very impactful for this team, but again, still a team that has a lot to be desired. I think they have potential to jump into C, but at best, it's going to be C. I have no hope for this team beating any of these rosters, which is unfortunate because I'm pretty good friends with some of the people on the roster. But I am going to put Charlotte Phoenix at D just because there is a lot that I need out of this team. I think they are trending in a better direction, but again, one result isn't enough. You look at their overall standings right now, they are 20th and didn't do anything in the fall regional, no points there, and they didn't qualify for the major either, obviously. So we haven't seen them compete in a while, and obviously with the new roster change, they are trying to make some adjustments. But I need Karma to have some big performances and show that she can be a carry rather than just in the qualifying matches where her team kind of slows down. Shadow, I got to see some confidence out of you, man. You're a really good player. You should know that. You've been able to show it consistently. You got to believe in yourself. So hopefully Jim or their coach can really build that confidence in this team and get something going. Maybe Alraz will be that spark that they need, but as of right now, just a lot to be desired from Charlotte Phoenix. BOSF and Down to Earth are kind of tough for me. I think BOSF, if you guys don't know, this is the former Jamal Jabari squad. They are staying the exact same with Krazix, Toasty, and LJ off the top of my head. I can double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's right. It is. So this is a team that is upset city and can do some stuff, but again, do I give them a nod? And maybe this is me just downplaying them, but they have shown potential. Right now, they're tied for 14th over. Yeah, you know what? We'll give them a C. I think this is a good team that's average. I think average is a good way to put it. I don't think they're going to beat any of the top tier, but I don't think they're going to lose to the lowers. And if they do, it's a close match. So I think they're a team that you just put up a fight against. They're never a freebie, which I think is where that average mentality comes to mind. C is average for me, and I don't think they're bad by any means, but I think they can push up quite a bit. I think there's a lot of teams, as I kind of speculate here, I think I could possibly move like maybe Alpine or something up, but I want to create a clear separation between the tiers and the way that teams are playing. I think all these guys have highs and lows. I think these consistently are towards the high. These are higher, but not at the very best. Well, these are the very best almost every single time. So to me, this makes sense. But BOSF, I think, is kind of the standard. You know, you're not going to get a bad performance out of them, but you're also not going to get the stellar high-flying performance. They've had some upsets, but they also dropped to some other teams. Middle of the pack, I think it makes sense. So last but not least is Down to Earth. Trying to figure out what this roster is going to be. Right now, it's not official, but in the past, it used to be Astro, Aeon, and then it was Nox's. Nox's was recently let go. He has joined the Timberwolves. They recently played in the WSOE qualifiers with Spider, who used to play for Adept, alongside Pirates and Calm. But again, a team that, although they've had big upsets, they're 16th right now. We haven't seen any performances as of late. And in WSOE, how did they do? I guess I'm going to double check that. Down to Earth, I mean, they did qualify, so maybe we could bump them up, but who did they win over? So they beat BOSF. Yeah, let's put Down to Earth in C tier. I think that's fair. Now that I look at this, I just feel like I'm second guessing everything I do because I think XSET is probably better. We're going to put XSET there. We're going to put Ghost there. I think this is where it is right now. For now. I'm changing my opinion on things. Don't judge me. But I think we're going to put XSET and Ghost in here because I think their potential is higher. Even though it's only one result and I completely said it, I'm going to adjust it anyway. I think C tier is just a massive collection of teams. Down to Earth is up there. I think I'm contradicting myself and I don't even care at this point. I think you can make arguments for them being towards the lower. But I think Down to Earth with their recent result, I mean, who do they beat? I mean, they qualify as a top 2. They don't take any losses the entire time. And they beat E United. They beat Prolimium, who beat that. They beat BOSF. Yeah, I mean, why not? Let's put them at C. I think they're going to be a hard team to beat. I think Spider's been a good addition. We'll get more information on these teams, obviously. Kind of jumping the gun on this to give you guys some heads up and inform you of the roster changes as well. But WSOE qualifiers are this weekend. We're going to put Down to Earth at C tier. We're going to bump XSET and Ghost up because I think they are better and they're going to trend better as well. But 72 PC and Charlotte kind of make me spooked. I think Charlotte may be able to bump up into C tier if Alraz is the addition, but based upon results and stuff, I think C tier is absolutely like loaded with a lot of teams that can move up or low, which I think is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. There is definitely some teams at the very top, but ultimately the way that I look at it right now is that there is a lot of teams, and I probably should have done an F and a D and then put some of these in D and then these down into F, but that's besides the point. Rocket League right now, because it is so competitive with a longer season and everything else, there is a lot going on, and these teams show that they can win and adjust against everybody else. It's just the big 4 that you see in SNA are ahead of everybody else. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops. We've got EU coming out tomorrow. So with that said, I do appreciate you guys taking the time to sit and watch this. A little bit longer than I wanted it to go, but there was a lot to talk about. So with that said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. We'll catch you next time. Peace.